Miriam, we spoke about so many different topics on the last show that you were on, and it was just such a wonderful, wonderful interview and conversation between all of us. I have been following the Hopi quite a bit in the past, and I actually was doing a little bit of research before the show today. But can you remind us a little bit about what the actual Blue Star prophecy is? A lot of people may not know that the Hopi as a people have their own prophecy about the coming peaceful transition that we're going to move into.
Yeah, I mean, everything that I share, of course, is from from my own perspective. So, I don't want any, I always start the conversation this way because I don't want any misinterpretation. The Hopi themselves have had a number of prophecies for, thousands of years, hundreds of years. And these prophecies have been, some of them have been shared in part with the public up to this point from certain villages and certain leaders and elders, I think I would say, not leaders, but elders in Hopi in the past. And it's many of these prophecies that have actually been known out in the world for, I would say, the last, 30 years. They've been predominant in society, outside of their own. And many of these prophecies have been proven to be some of the most accurate prophecies known to man. It's rather interesting because, and please don't ask me to, I could look it up on my own computer and list them off, but they've had prophecies about crisscrossing lines, crisscrossing the country, and that was railway tracks, and there's been a number of them. And, of course, a lot of these prophecies are up to interpretation, and the interpretation is from village to village, or it's from interpretation from elder to elder, in fact. It's a little bit difficult to get a full handle on. But the one in particular that I have, there's a couple of them, in fact, that I've been interested in myself because of my own personal journey. And that one is the Blue Star Prophecy. And, of course, the name of my book is Blue Star Fulfilling Prophecy. So what was, to recap the audience, to let them know that what happened with myself was that I had physical one-on-one encounters with tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed extraterrestrials. And during this particular encounter, there's a lot of noise in the background there, Bernard.
Is that me, maybe? Okay.
Okay, maybe with your, yes, it is. Yeah. That's what happens when you get a new computer. You have to roll into it.
It's like breaking in a new pair of shoes.
Exactly. So what happened was, with myself, is that I was given a piece of information about a star appearing in the sky, and that the visual on this particular star from every corner of the planet would in fact mean that we were going into the transition phase of our world, and also that we would be going into chaos. There was a lot of information that was given around this particular time. And yes, some of that did actually involve, quote, earth changes. But through it all, it depended on how society and how humanity reacted to all of these things and what actually took place within the hearts of human beings that would actually dictate, at least to some degree, how we move through this transition time. So when I found the Hopi in 2003, when I went through their land and then went online after I'd met them, I very briefly started reading up some information and quickly found that their prophecies coincided with what I was told. And if you go online and research Blue Star Prophecy of the Hopi Indians, you will find some information there that's out in the public about what has been there for quite some time, about a blue star that will appear, and once it does, it will be a signal that the time of purification has arrived. And that sounds rather frightening, the time of purification, but, you know, again, it's up to interpretation of the wording and how it's being presented and what it is that's being presented. And from the Hopi end of things, you know, I really have been very, very adamant about this, that no one can accurately interpret these prophecies except the highest traditional leaders themselves. From my perspective, however, I believe that the Blue Star prophecy arrived here in I believe, November. I think it was November of 2007. And when that took place, I believe that was the beginning of this cycle that we were moving into. And so, again, you know, after having a great deal of spiritual knowledge that was transferred to me, shown to me, that I felt I understood, the more that I have learned just through casual conversations with Hopis themselves, the more I realized that, you know, the spiritual understanding that we as human beings are actually capable of tapping into, is very much similar to Hopi knowledge, which is very simple and yet complex at the same time. This all relates to all of us because the time of purification and the time of end times, as I call them, or can call them. I can call it many things. It can be named many things. It just means that we're going through a transition. We're going through change. We're going through physical changes, earth changes, consciousness changes, all of that. And so the blue star, for me, in November, represented the beginning of entering into that time. Now, there have been people who have come forward and said that, yes, the blue stars appeared when Hale-Bopp went through and this, when that, and so forth. But collectively, the Hopi have not come forward to this date, collectively, and made an announcement that the blue star has come. So they have not actually done that. Now, that kind of ties in and rolls into how we, you know, who we are and what we're all doing here on the planet. In my view, from all of the knowledge I carry, is that we're here to be spiritual beings. We're here to be spiritual people. And that means religion or otherwise. Whether you're Christian, Muslim, it doesn't matter. A spiritualist, atheist, honestly, even if you're an atheist, it's still a pathway to something, an understanding of more closely who you are. So everything's acceptable. Everything's acceptable. All beliefs are acceptable.
Now, has anyone ever, like, taken a photograph of the blue star, or have you taken a photograph? I know that in the Eastern philosophy, they have the idea of the Maitreya, and I've been seeing some of that around. Are they similar? Are they kind of like intertwined as far as their belief?
I think that all the beliefs that are out there are intertwined no matter what. You just have to look and be very open-minded about the thread that you're looking for. All beliefs that I have ever heard talked about have there's similar little threads that are carried through all of them. And those threads are the most basic knowledge that one can actually find, which is talking about an inner truth. It's talking about following the path to God in whatever form that is being shared by the particular belief. It's talking about respect. It's talking about honoring. It's talking about understanding and a progression towards a higher understanding of what and who God is in whatever form you choose to look at that. So as far as the truth of what we're walking into, you know, earth changes is a constant, stars appearing is a constant, difficulties for humanity is a constant floods, fire, famine, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. All of these things are actually within all of these different beliefs to some degree. If you look at revelations in the Bible, it tells about some of these things. Diseases that are coming, all of this type of stuff. If you look at some of the ancient indigenous cultures, they also talk about it, a time of transition when the earth is going to start to shake. It's all in the wording, and this is one of the reasons why you need to be very cautious that wording is used to create a perception of the people that are giving the information, and that's why it's critical that you keep an open mind and look for that thread through everything. And I believe, from my perspective, that's why this is important for Hopi. There's threads of information, again, that actually do relate back out to all of these different indigenous people around the world when it comes from Hopi, and also within the religions of the world when it comes to some of these prophecies of Hopi. And the blue star is one of them. Even in the Bible, it talks about a star that would arrive. And I believe that there's always going to be debate over it. Even if we saw the biggest star that we've ever seen arrive, I think there would still be someone that would say, no, that wasn't it. So we need to live life every day with the outlook that today is the only day we need to focus on, and not necessarily in some ways we don't need to look too far into the future and focus on it, but really focus on how we are conducting ourselves in this moment.
Yeah. Another question, as far as the Hopi prophecy is concerned, I was reading that the mythology behind it, or the legend, or whatever you wish to call it, talks about the Earth going back into its counterclockwise rotation. Have you heard anything about this, or could that be a part of the Earth changes that we're talking about?
With any of the information regarding this counter clockwise position, the flipping of the poles, as a lot of people have been talking about, many indigenous tribes from around the world have been sharing information on all of this. And this is one of the things that it is important to pay attention to, the fact that a small tribe in the middle of the jungle in South America is saying the same thing as a tribe from Africa and a tribe from North America. So there is that information that's being brought forward by different tribes from around the world about these pole shifts. The problem with all of these prophecies being brought forward is that either part of the information is being told and then it's up to the interpretation. For example, the Mayans have been very vocal about saying that there's going to be 3 days of darkness. Well, the way that I understand prophecy to work, the way that I've seen it, the way that I comprehend it for myself, is that everything is still up to slight interpretation. So the prophecy may have actually been carried through one to the next, to the next, to the next generation by saying that there's going to be 3 days of darkness. But what is the actual interpretation of that? Who interpreted that? Was it one person that all of a sudden changed it? So what does that mean? Does that mean we're physically going to be sitting here in 3 days of darkness? Because if we don't get sun on the planet for 3 days, we're all going to die, Mm-hmm. We're not going to live through that. So they're saying, oh, no, don't worry, just sit there for 3 days and you'll be okay. Well, I don't think so. I personally, I don't think that that's what the interpretation is. I believe that the 3 days of darkness is the 3 days of the Mayan calendar in whatever form. And I'm not an expert on the Mayans at all. I mean, at all. But it goes into the whole idea of this pole shift as well, how the interpretations of exactly what's going to happen as a result of that, there's extremes all over the place, even within the indigenous cultures themselves. And again, I'd have to state that the Hopi themselves have not collectively come out and made statements about the pole shifts. There has been trickles of information on just about every prophecy out there from within Hopi itself. But until I hear from, the Hopi elders coming forward and making these statements boldly together, I would say that we need to use caution. But here's what I will tell you, Bernard, that is very important to the Hopi. And I do know this because I've heard it so many times. The Hopi believe, and this is critical above all else, the Hopi believe that whatever our thoughts are can have and do have an effect on our world. So if we're all focusing on the pole shifts and the earthquakes and the 3 days of darkness and the turmoil and the chaos, then that is what we will create. That's what the Hopi believe. And I can say that. Absolutely. I can say that. I can also tell you that from my own perspective that, because their prophecies and because of who they are, any little piece of them has been so used and torn apart by people who really don't have the full story or the full knowledge of the energies and the way that they work. It's a little bit like saying, if you say the wrong syllable, that whatever your words are could have an adverse effect on the spirit of people. When you sit in a room and you hear about the fact that you're going to die, this is what's going to happen, it's going to get dark, but don't worry about it. Really, you'll be okay. Your families are going to starve. It's like, what are you doing? Yeah. I mean, humanity has the ability to come together. Humanity has the ability to use their hearts, their minds, their souls to be able to further in a positive way. And so all of the prophecies of Hopi, I know, are focused, and all of the ceremonies of Hopi, they hold, and this is public knowledge as well. When they go into a ceremony, they say, you go into that ceremony with a humble heart, and then you make prayers for the earth and for humanity and for all life. And they always ask the world to join them in those prayers. And if there's ever a people that have no judgment of your own personal beliefs, it is Hopi. They have no judgment on any belief whatsoever. And because they believe that everyone ultimately is praying to the same God, just using different ways. That's it. Mm-hmm. They believe. And so the way that they do this is through prayer and through very, very dedicated ceremonies that are literally weeks long, and then they come out for a week, and then they go back in for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's a whole ceremonial cycle they do for the entire year. It's not just one day a week where you go for an hour and you pray. I mean, this is about day and night, day and night, day and night going in. It's like going into a monastery, except they still have to live, except they don't have the monastery set up anymore because they can't. They're surrounded in the United States by a material world, and they have to have jobs, and they have to, provide for their families. But, it's with great sacrifice that these people do what they're doing, as it is with most people who are dedicated towards working for humanity and the earth. It's a dedication and a sacrifice, but it's one that is rewarded through many different means. And so these...
Absolutely.
I beg your pardon?
I was going to say, absolutely. I can completely relate to that. You know, you trade one life for another. Absolutely.
So the Hopi are an important part of our world because the reality is that indigenous cultures from around the world, and not just Hopi, but from all over the world, have been suppressed, kicked off their land. And they shouldn't, you know, I'm going to say this because people are offended at times because they say, oh, well, the native people want this and the indigenous people want that and they want everything. No. What some of them actually want, meaning the most traditional people, is to be left alone, to just practice their beliefs and their religion. And right now within Hopi, this is the issue. It's a very critical issue, and it's one that the world does need to pay attention to. Because the Hopi right now are being faced by a situation that is so complex that it really can't make sense to an outsider. They have a proposed constitution that their own people, one of their own people, is trying to bring in. And a lot of people say, oh, well, all they have to do is vote for it. Whatever the majority of people is, they'll just vote for it. Well, guess what? People in Hopi still live in the ancient ways. They live without telephones, without cell phones, computers, televisions, electricity, running water. Those people that are following the traditional path do not get involved in politics, do not vote. They do not follow that outsider way. They follow the traditional path that they have been doing and that their ancestors have been doing for thousands of years. So when people say, oh, we'll just get them to vote, they don't even know that there is going to be a vote. Because maybe they go to their mailbox once a month. Maybe they go there once every 3 months. They won't even know about it. And within the village itself, most of them will not get involved in conversation about politics because they don't want to get involved. So the only people that are voting are the progressive people, even though there's less of them. So it is a very unique situation that's happening there. And then when you take a look at this proposed constitution and you read it, well, as an outsider, you can say in coming from an industrial world, you'll read the Constitution, you'll say, oh, no problem. What's the problem here? I don't get it. Because clearly it states that, you know, the traditional people still have control over this and they have control over that part of their you know, their traditions and so forth. But it's actually not the truth, because when the new Constitution is being proposed, first of all, it's being done by the removal of the right to a traditional way by chiefs of certain villages, their authorities being questioned by a handful of individuals. A handful of individuals. And because these people are making question about this, they kick them out, they remove them, violently, in fact, from the ability for them to be the protectors to a certain degree of the land and some of the decisions that are made within the tribe itself. And by doing so, this one individual, by them coming forward and putting forth this proposed constitution, what it's doing is saying, we're not going to pay attention to your traditions. We've already pushed you aside. We question who you are. You have no right to practice your traditional ways. The way that the wording is, unless you understood the exact details of the traditional way of life, you don't understand the issue. And it's even difficult for me to explain. For example, when they say that, the villages will have, in this proposed constitution, it says the clans will have control over the clan lands. Okay, clan lands, meaning, this clan, that I'm not going to even name the clans, but the different clans within Hopi. What that means is that the chief of those villages has no say over the lands themselves. The issue with that is that unless there has always been certain, quote, clan lands within Hopi and within each one of the villages, and I really hope that I get this straight because so if any of my Hopi friends out there listen to this afterwards, please forgive me if I didn't explain this properly.
You're doing your best for their cause.
Yes, exactly. But from how it was expressed to me, and I looked up the actual wording within the actual constitution that they have now in the proposed constitution, what it means is that the lands themselves become the property of the tribe. And then that means that a particular remote area within Hopi that is not clan lands where they plant their corn, okay, that what will happen is that if that is the most sacred point within all of Hopi land itself, it means that the elected chairman, which would then be called the president would then be able to sign a contract on behalf of one man, or woman, but more than likely a man, would be able to sign a contract, one man, be able to sign a contract on his own to create a mining operation on the most sacred point for all the traditional people of Hopi. And I'm kind of giving you an extreme view of how this would work, but ultimately that's what would happen. Now, people say that the way that the council is set up, that there's checks and balances because they would have to vote, but that's actually not the case either, because it doesn't say what they need in order to make a quorum, in order to make a vote. And it says, so that means that if the chairman and the vice chairman is sitting there, they can vote together. If there's one person present, the chairman has the swing vote. So that would mean that he would be able to do this and that he would be able to negotiate all financial matters on behalf of Hopi, and that would also mean the control of the land by selling it, developing it. I know for a fact that this particular chairman that's here right now wants to bring in gambling onto Hopi lands, which the traditional people have always been opposed to completely. And there's confusion out there about Peabody Coal and what's happening with them as well. Peabody Coal they're being told that the water underneath Hopi is being used by Peabody, and that's where all the water is going. And from what I understand, again, simply my understanding, that's not the case.
Right.
Peabody Coal isn't the one. One of the last chairmen signed away the water rights to Hopi and sold it so that all that water goes to Phoenix. So it's not Peabody Coal itself that's doing that either. And so there's a lot of confusion about this. Like I said, everything within Hopi is complicated. But why is this important to everyone else? Let me ask you a question, Bernard, if I may.
Yes.
either of you, in fact, either of you, can you, if you allow me to ask you both this question and give me your insight, then I hope that I will be able to expand on it and make it really clear. Why do you? Why is it that Hopi is important to the world, from your perspective, or do you have any idea why that would be? And I'd like to hear both of your perspectives on that, if possible.
Do you want to go first, Janine, or do you want me to go? Is Janine there? I think I might have lost her. My answer will be that as an indigenous culture and as an indigenous tribe, it's very important that we have people that hold on to the traditions, people that remember the old ways, people that are stewards of the earth. So for me, they are a living example of an ancient culture that could easily make our world a better place during this tumultuous time. And that basically is my answer, and Janine, unfortunately.
Okay. I would say that is very true, and I agree with you completely, Bernard. There are other reasons why the saving of this particular culture is critical for humanity. One of them is that there are many causes all over the earth, and people are indeed standing up for those causes, for the women who are treated so horribly in different parts of the world just because they are women, for children who are made into work slaves, for people that are being killed because of the color of their skin, for people in Africa who do not have clean water. What is it that makes this particular group of people so, quote, special? The fact is that all over the earth right now, the microcosms all over the world of pockets of people are being subjected to the destruction of their way of life in any and all ways, whether it is from actual blood-letting killing of individuals to the taking away of their ancient traditions, to the taking away of their languages or their religious beliefs. This group of people are within the United States of America, the country that takes themselves to war all over the earth, standing up for what they say is the right for the people to decide for themselves how to live, to protect the right of human life. And yet, in their own country, they stand back and do absolutely nothing in order to assist these traditional people from having their traditional rights for the freedom of their religion to be taken from them. And with the hand of the Secretary of Interior of the United States of America. They have claimed that they cannot step in to the meddling of the way that the Hopi are running themselves, that they are creating their own laws. But in fact, within every constitution that was created for all tribes in North America, those constitutions had to be held up to the same standard as the Constitution of the United States of America, which is the freedom to practice religion. And so the Hopi are saying that they demand that they have the freedom to practice their religion, and that by not consulting at any time the religious leaders of Hopi, and understand, I am not speaking for them. I am simply sharing the knowledge that I have, okay? By doing this, what we as outsiders are saying is that it is the same as other people on the planet. We just are going to turn a blind eye to the killing of the Rwandans who were killed just because they were, from the one tribe in Rwanda. They were all murdered, and the world stood back and allowed that to happen. That we allowed for, an entire country such as South Africa, where Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in a prison cell, I believe it was 27 years, because of the color of his skin. We have to, at some point, become human again and say, enough. These people are not asking for millions of dollars. They are not asking for massive amounts of land. They're not asking the government of anywhere to give them anything other than the right to practice their religion. And what that means is that they ask for the right to hold on to their sacred points. This is no different than the Mamos, the sacred people in Colombia, who ask for nothing more than the right to be able to go to their sacred points all over the Sierra Nevada mountain range, where, the government there has taken over by military and built up, dams. They have made, tourist resorts, all sorts of things. And never are the spiritual people of Colombia consulted on these things. If we continue to go and disregard the actual rights of these people, it is not without understanding that there always can be compromise in all things. And I believe from my observation, from my interaction with traditional people, that there is those compromises. There are compromises that they will make. This isn't a demand saying you can't have anything, you can't do anything, that's it. It's saying speak to us and allow us to give you the guidance and share with you our insight into life itself. So the Hopi are extremely important because what they're saying is, look, we are living in the United States of America, and the United States of America and the American people and the BIA and Secretary of Interior and Obama himself need to respect that these people have a right to their religion. And so this is what it is that we are talking about.
So it's almost as if we're back to a constitutional struggle, basically, at this point with them.
Yes.
It seems that this is really the high point of setting an example of what we stand for as a country.
Yes. Absolutely. And so, one of the things right now, Bernard, is that through this Constitution, the current Constitution that they have, this is again, what is a Constitution? What does Constitution mean? The Constitution is the creation of laws. It is the absolute drawing up of what becomes law. That means that you can go to prison if you go against the Constitution, correct? So
yes, if you're poor.
Exactly. And you know what, Bernard? Bernard,
yes.
I thank you for saying that, and maybe a little creator-driven insight into that, because this is the issue. They have a current Constitution, and within that current Constitution, it clearly states, it absolutely clearly states, and I'm going to actually go into my something. I'm going to try and find something as I'm speaking to you. Within the current Constitution, there is it actually says within it. One moment, please. I'm just trying to find something. Okay, I've got it here. I'm just pulling something up on my computer that I want to read to you.
Yes, by all means, Miriam.
The Constitution clearly states that they have a right to practice their traditions, okay, and that is clearly defined in the current Constitution. And it says, in the Tribal Council, in Article 6, Section 1K of the Hopi Constitution, the Hopi Tribal Council has a duty to, quote, to protect the arts, crafts, traditions, and ceremonies of the Hopi Indians. I'm going to read that again. Current Constitution states that the Tribal Council has a duty to protect the arts, crafts, traditions, and ceremonies of the Hopi Indians. This is the law.
And this is present or future?
This is present. In the new Constitution, in the new proposed Constitution that they're bringing forward, it clearly says that this does not, there's no wording like this left in there. There's nothing that says that they have to protect anything. What this means is this, to give you more clearly defined, not only do they take over the land and they can do whatever they want, it would also mean that from what I understand, it's a four-pillar branch, government that's set up. They're totally reorganizing the government through this proposed constitution, and it means it would be a four-pillar constitution, one of the pillars being the tradition. However, again, you have to understand law in order to understand how this would affect and really understand the traditions, and it's difficult for this reason. But it means that one branch can go in and audit another branch. What does this mean? And then they can oversee, meaning that they can go in and make judgment on whether or not they're doing a good job or not, and they can sort of step in and say, you know what, we're going to take a look at what's going on here, and then we'll make a judgment as to whether or not you're doing a good thing. And if not, then we're going to propose that changes are made. Understand? Do you understand what I'm saying?
A bully tactic.
Right. Exactly. So here's, to give a little bit more clarity again, what this means is this. When the one part of the judicial branch steps in, it means that they could actually go into the kiva, and this is from my understanding, and I hope I'm getting this right, that they could go into the kiva during an ancient ceremony that was only shared with what they call the initiated, and someone from the tribal council, could be sent in to observe and then decide whether or not they need to make any changes. And people say, oh, come on now, Miriam, that wouldn't happen. Oh, come on now, Miriam, they didn't kill millions of Rwandans. They didn't kill people just because of the color of their skin or the fact that their faces weren't covered up in certain countries in the world if you're a woman, or because your hair was down, or because you happen to be from a particular tribe. Come on now, let's be real. This situation is part of life. And the Hopi have been a people that have maintained a traditional way of life for thousands of years within surrounded by one of the most materialistic, material-orientated, I would say, not materialistic, material-orientated groups of people, and the most financially successful groups of people on the earth. So the question then becomes, what are we doing to ourselves, and when will this come to our own back door? When will this come to our homes? At what point will we say enough? It's not that it is not enough to say the Hopi are important. what I'm suggesting is that Hopi is another one of those microcosms in the world. And if all of these people are so interested in Hopi, and they're so interested in their knowledge and what they know and don't know, and they're so interested in their prophecies, that what I'm going to say is there's a reason for that. Because somehow, some way, they're affecting us. And we feel that. In our hearts, we feel that. So I'm actually putting a call. Yes, and so I'm actually putting a call out through my website, bluestarprophecy.com, and I put a post up today specifically asking people to send donations through my website for the Hopi people, and that every dime of that money will go towards protecting the Hopi people. And it will go to the cost of hiring attorneys. So if someone out there has attorneys in the state of Arizona that could work for a pro bono, please contact me at Miriam at bluestarprophecy.com or through Miriam at thegreatgathering.org. If someone goes to the website, bluestarprophecy.com, and they have any sort of assistance that they can give directly to the Hopi in regard to financial paying for these attorneys that they need in order to protect their religion and their traditional way of life and their land and their beliefs, they can make donations through that one button that is specifically, for the Hopi themselves. And Wonderful. That will go to them. If they have a larger donation that they would want to give, I can put them directly in touch with the one attorney that they would like to hire in order to help them in this situation, and get them right in touch with that particular attorney. And they can just contact that firm directly and make a donation directly to the firm themselves. So what I'm saying is, there's a lot of causes out there that people need financial assistance with. But what I'm saying is, and what I'm really asking for from my heart, is for people to hear that this is not about how special and how perfect and how, idolized and godified, I don't even know if that's a word, but
deified, yeah.
Deified the Hopi are. But to respect them as people, and as a people that have held on to an ancient way of life. They are no different than the Tibetans. The Tibetans were sent because of who they are and their beliefs. Their land was taken from them, and the highest Tibetan lamas, including the Dalai Lama himself, had to leave his country, his home, his land, his sacred items within and go into another country for safety.
Yeah.
Understand that this situation is no different in Hopi, but it's happening within the four corners of the United States of America. One of the countries that talks about the freedoms of the people, about the religious practices, that they have a freedom to practice their religion. So if that's the case, then I implore the people of the United States of America and from around the world to donate through this website, because all of this money will go through. And when they have the money that they need, that particular button that is just for the Hopi will be pulled. I will pull the button because I don't want to be involved with giving them money just to have. This is about these people who need our help. It's like every other cause out there. We need to become involved, Bernard, on whatever it is our heart becomes attached to. And if that means helping people in Africa, or the fight with the fight with the Serbians, I think it is, that's still happening within Serbia itself.
Yes.
The fighting that's going on in South America what's happening in Colombia with the Colombian mamos, whether it's about getting clean water to villages in Africa or anywhere else in the world, creating farming communities. I mean, I'm saying we as human beings need to become involved. We need to begin paying attention, because if we don't, we're going to continue to have situations like the Gulf, the Gulf spill happen. We're going to continue having genocides happen before our very eyes. And your rights and my rights are important. Our right to freedom of speech without becoming violent in any way. I do not condone violence or aggression in any way, shape, or form. I do not agree with going against any sort of government or anything along those lines. And I make that really clear, because sometimes I get people that think that. And that's not what this is about. This is about asking respectfully for the assistance to come in and the support from our actual laws and governances that are already in place. And this is what we're asking for as people, as human beings, as life. As the stewards of the land, indigenous cultures do have great knowledge. And if you want to know how valuable they are to you in your home, this is what I suggest. You take one area alone and research and do a lot of homework on this and find out where many of some of the most important medicines that have ever been given to the world have come from. And you will find and trace that they all came from knowledge that was held by the ancient traditional people from around the world. Not just in what I would call indigenous Indian people, but I'm talking about ancient cultures, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of those very deeply spiritual beliefs that are really connected with the life of the energy of life itself on the earth itself. Those cultures hold so much knowledge. And we, as the outside, it's time we begin respecting what's left of that, because you never know where the true knowledge lies and who carries it. So I thank you so much, Bernard,
Miriam,
for letting me ramble.
Listen, you are not rambling. I want to let you know that I've hung on every word that you said, and I've even extended the show a few minutes to give it some time to interact and talk a little bit more. But it's very important what's happening, and I think what the point that I got from your sharing this information with us, kind of like what you just said, is the fact that there are many wisdom-based traditions, wisdom-based peoples that are around the world that have been either through genocide or war, displacement, or through modern economics, have lost their voice. And to have the Hopi that are right here in our own backyard, and just so I can clarify, the Hopi lands are in Arizona or Arizona and other places as well?
The Hopi reside in Arizona within the United States of America, and they have a reservation that is surrounded by the Navajo or Diné lands. But note that the Hopi themselves feel that even within their, quote, reservation lands, there are other points all over in the area that they consider to be sacred, and that they do still, after all of these thousands of years, travel to go to these different points in the area and do sacred ceremony and the ancient ceremony that has been carried on. And this ceremony is about praying for life, praying for earth, praying for humanity, praying for the souls of the, it's like in my interpretation. This is not their words at all. It's mine. It's like saying,
right.
if you consider what a soul is, the soul is the actual spirit or the energy of the individual. It's like saying they pray for the soul of the universe, of all life, of everything that is. It's the very essence of life itself. That's my wording, not theirs. But when they do this, that's what they're doing. You know, we have world meditations, Bernard. We have world meditations all the time that are coming through.
Oh, yeah, I do them all the time.
Well, and we all participate for a couple of hours or, you know, a day or something like that. The Hopi do the same thing. They go into a community-based ceremony that is focused on you and me and the rest of the world. They themselves have been doing the ultimate world meditations that become very dedicated in weeks and weeks of preparations, of step by step by step, of exactly laid out specific instructions that they have been following for thousands of years. And through that repetition and through those ceremonies and through that dedication and through those, you know, clean hearts that they go into the ceremonies with, it's for this that they go into what I would call like a world meditation. That's what this is.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
this is what they do. And these people, you know, they don't go on vacations. They have no money. Yes, they live in homes. I mean, they live within the United States, but their homes are simple. Even if they do have television, some of them do have televisions and live in a house and, you know, all of that. They're still taking probably half of the year to go into ceremony. So even though they're working, and they have to hold jobs in order to, because they can't go out and hunt the way that they used to. They can't go out and roam the land the way that they used to. Those things have been taken from there. They're forced to go into our society, but they only enter into it as far as they need to in order to hold on to what they have.
Wow, it sounds like we have a lot in common.
Yes.
The Hopi and I. I think that we're all forced into living in society, even though we may not choose to. But what it sounds that I'm hearing, as far as everything that you've conveyed today, is that their dedication and their calling is to the unconditional love and the perpetuation of life of all mankind here on this planet. And there's not very many of us that are still doing that. And it reminds me a little bit of the old 70s, 80s movies where you saw the Greek gods and, you know, they kind of like, you know, would give, you know, nurturing light to the earth or anything like that. But yet this is real, and this is something that they were brought up with as a tradition that is still, you know, a part of today's culture for them. And to be able to hold on to something like that is so precious. And it's just important because for me, I mean, and from my perspective, that's what we're moving toward anyway. So to have a reminder of where we're going is probably one of the most important ideas or ideals that we can really consider. That you know, it's kind of like we have one video on GIC called "Remember Why We're Here." And this is basically it. They are doing what we're here to do, and I can't imagine having somebody having another culture being destroyed by modern economics. And unfortunately, that's what it comes down to: is modern economics.
And here's the thing. There again, to reiterate this, most traditional people around the world, I'm quite sure, would say that the only thing that they really want is to be left alone, to give them their small portion of land and just leave them be and not take away their rights and their, you know, their water and their their land, their ceremonies, their right to their language, all of these basic things. You and I have grown up, well, I shouldn't speak for you because I don't know, Bernard, but I certainly grew up in a world where I was allowed to speak my language, which is English. I was allowed to, I was allowed all of these things. I was allowed to speak freely. I wasn't fearful of my way of life being taken from me in some ways. But I can't imagine if someone came to me right now and said, you can't speak your language. You have to speak this other language right now. I'd be like, there's a clear... it did happen to Hopi, and it happened to many other people around the planet where their languages are absolutely being taken from them. And it's not as brutal. It's more subtle now. It's much more subtle now. It's done just very subtly. And it's either because of the ignorance of people, or it's because, meaning they just don't know what they're doing, or it's because it's one tiny little thing that somebody says, oh, well, they don't think that anything's going to happen, and yet something happens over here. If the microcosms, meaning the Buddhists, the Dalai Lama, they tried to take away the rights of the Tibetan monks. There is no difference here. If you respect the Dalai Lama, you must respect the Hopi. If you respect the Buddhist tradition, you need to respect the Hopi tradition. If you respect the Hopi tradition, you need to respect the Rwandans. You need to respect the Africans. This is about understanding that each and every one of us has a responsibility to our neighbor, to those around us, to the causes that we see where the rights of the individuals are being taken. We don't need to stand up and start screaming and yelling. But we do need to take a stand. And there's a couple, again, I'm going to reiterate this again, that there are a couple of ways that you can assist in this situation with Hopi. One of them is that the Secretary of Interior, Salazar, who is, his phone number is 202-208-3100. This is on my website as well. That phone number again is this is within the United States of America, 202-208-3100. This is Secretary of Interior Salazar, Salazar. And give him a call and phone the office and ask them to uphold the constitutional rights of the traditional people of Hopi, their right to practice religion. That's all. Please send an email. The email address for Salazar is feedback@ios as in Sam .d as in dog oi.gov. That again is feedback@ios.doi.gov. Secretary Salazar, and ask him to uphold the right to the Hopi people to practice their religion. And that's what you can do if you are not able to help and give your support to assist them financially. That won't cost you anything. If you do have the means to assist them, by all means, please make a donation through my website. On the front page is the write-up of this show, and that particular donate button on this particular article, all of the donations will go to the hiring of attorneys for the Hopi people. And this is truly about the protection of everyone, because if we continue to allow all of these rights and freedoms to be taken away from the people of the earth, then our rights and freedoms will be taken away. And it's a slow process. It's a slow process. And I'm not going to even sit back and say that anyone does this intentionally. I'm saying we need to educate each other about what it is that we're doing to one another in the world. So
that's very much my point.
It is.
I think that a lot of people seem to get confused with the fact of what a light worker is. And, there's this whole talk about light worker movement, and a lot of people get stuck on the feel-good aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is to shine a light on the truth of reality of what's going on in our world and how we need to protect one another as far as what you're saying, the culture, what I'm hearing is it sounds like a cultural genocide, and I don't want to speculate, Miriam, but it sounds to me like a commercial interest has started to influence this new constitution. And I know it's only speculation because I don't know if you have proof or I have proof. I know I don't. But it just seems to follow that theme of, okay, well, let us have the right to rape your land. Let us have the right to suppress your belief system, so therefore you can conform to our generic way of living. And this is just something that I think that during this process of cleansing, as you stated earlier, that needs to come toward the forefront. And that's basically what I'm hearing today is, let's bring this to the forefront. Let's stop cultural genocide. Let us stop this dissemination of ancient practices, ancient wisdoms in the name of quote-unquote progress. And let us remember what is really important to us as individual human beings, as individual communities, as individual cultures, and respect each other in that sense. And not only respect each other, but to support each other and to defend each other from the grasp of predatory capitalism in so many words. I mean, I could go into more detail, but that's kind of what I'm feeling here. Is there any evidence of a commercial interest influencing their new constitution that you know of, or it's merely speculation on my part?
I'm not even going to comment on that.
Okay. No comment. Good answer. Okay.
No comment. I would not want to get involved in that conversation because I don't feel that it would be beneficial to anyone at this point. And so I don't have enough knowledge or information on that, so I really do have to just say no comment. We can speculate in many different directions as to what it is and why and what if and so on and so forth. But my question would be, looking at any microcosm or macrocosm that's out there and saying what is the interest and why is this happening. It is normally because of individuals or groups that have special interests. So, again, I don't like to focus on that. What I would rather focus on is to say that these individuals or groups or whatever it is or whoever it is that has this happening and is pushing forward this proposed constitution, this is how crazy this is, Bernard. If you live in one of these villages and you're a traditional person, you have to have a ballot. You have to have a voting registration. Well, how are these people even going to be notified? So far, in Hopi, no one's received anything through the mail to tell them that this is happening. Some of these people don't watch television. They're out in the far. How are they going to be notified that their very way of life is under possible stepping aside and pushing them aside and saying that they're not allowed to live their ancient ways in this very simple way? In one of the villages in particular, they still have a traditional court system that has been in place for thousands of years, traditional court system that they still use to this very day. If this proposed constitution comes in, it means that the tribe can walk into that situation and say, no, you can't do this anymore. And in order to understand this fully, you'd have to be an attorney to go through the Constitution. A layman is not capable of doing it. In order to understand how it's going to affect their way of life, their traditions and religion, you'd have to understand the Hopi. This is not a religion you go to church once a week.
Right.
This is a religion where when they wake in the morning, they start with their religion. When they go to sleep at night, they end it with their religion. The food that they eat is part of their religion. Where they plant their food is part of their religion. The way that their houses are built is part of their religion. Where they build their houses is part of their religion. What water they use and where that water is collected from is part of their religion. There's no part of their society that isn't tied to their religion itself. And if you destroy one part of it, if you take away their right to the land, you take away their right to their religion, period. And there is no halfway point on that. Certain areas need to be protected. Certain areas need to have those assurances. And going against that one line that I already clearly stated, which was that the council, let me find it again and reiterate this one more time.
Yes, please.
That the council has where are we here? I apologize.
Right.
In Article 6, Section 1K, the Hopi Tribal Council has a duty to, quote, protect the arts, crafts, traditions, and ceremonies of the Hopi Indians. Again, this is the law. This is the current law. How can you take a current law, throw it out, and say, okay, those protections are now gone? How can you break the law? By doing this alone and not having, just by taking this one section alone out of the proposed Constitution, you're in essence breaking the law. This is my layman's understanding of this.
Right.
But anyone that knows law can understand that. And if you understand the foundation of the way that the law works. So it is a situation where the Hopi have one of the most talked about, they have prophecies that have been clearly mentioned in every time prophecy is talked about, they bring up Hopi. Every time they talk about traditional ceremonial people of Earth, the Hopi is going to be talked about. When you talk about the Tibetans, more than likely you're going to be talking about Hopi. When you talk about the Mayans, you're going to be talking about the Hopi. When you talk about religious freedoms, you're going to be talking about Hopi. When they talk about ancient traditional governances and tribal, court systems, the United States of America actually, within the government itself, and I'd have to get a little more information on this, brought up and made mention of the Hopi Indians, quote, and how they had this ancient tribal system set up for a tribal court. And it's already been referenced within the United States of America and their government. So there is something to be said about these ancient wisdoms. How much are we really letting go of when they've given us so much wisdom in itself? And what is it that at this particular time, so many people are looking to ancient wisdoms in all forms, whether they be religious or spiritual, to give us something greater and a deeper understanding of who we are and where we're going and what we need to do in order to get there? We've got to pay attention to what's happening around us. So it is related to all people. It is related to all directions. It is related to all races, religions, beliefs, societies within the world. And if you believe that and you have the means to help, then do. And if you don't want to give,
by all means,
if you don't want to give financially directly through me to the funding of to these attorneys, then send me an email, and I will speak to you, I will contact you, and I will get information to you directly for how you can contact the attorney directly and give to them.
That's wonderful, Miriam. Thank you. I mean, it's, and I said it earlier in the show, it's just so important for me as an individual who is, for lack of a better term, trying to spread light and unconditional love and understanding around the world, to have cultures such as the Hopi, the Tibetans, and all these other cultures that we had spoken of, to be that, for lack of a better term, that connection to the old ways. Many of us talk about, the old ways, and the old ways may not necessarily be the best ways, but as far as the wisdom within the old ways, and the reason why I say it may not be the best ways is that, the Mayans and sacrifices and whatnot, we don't want to do sacrifices, but there is something to be said for the wisdom keepers of this planet. There is something to be said for the stewards of our earth. There is something to be said for the relationship between these, for lack of a better term, indigenous culture or native cultures of our planet, and to really just let them fall into this spiral of capitalistic disintegration. It's really, it's not in our best interest. It is probably something we're going to be sorry about when it comes to the time. Let's say, and I'm only speculating here to all of our listeners, let's say that the you-know-what hits the fan, and there's no more internet, there's no more electric, there's no more telephone, there's no more TV, there's no more grocery store, there's no more gas station. Well, I think that it's very fair to say that at that point it will be people, or the peoples like that of the Hopi, like that who have lived in harmony with our planet, that have been stewards of our planet, and not only stewards of our planet, but stewards of our planetary soul, for lack of a better term, our planetary wholeness and goodness as a whole, that are going to be the ones who teach us how to live in harmony, not only with each other, but live in harmony with our planet again. And as we see, for those of us that keep up with current events and whatnot, I'm not one who watches television, but I will do my best to keep up a little bit. And that is that, the human rights, and this is not only just the Hopi, but this is across the planet, the human rights situation is disintegrating. And it's not only disintegrated for the indigenous or for the people who are brown or tan or color or whatnot, but for white people too, whether you want to believe it or not. Even white people or lighter-skinned people who have always usually been put up on a pedestal by the elites are now suffering the injustices of human rights violations. And if we look at the trend, if we look at, how, it's kind of like, in my eyes and in my philosophical mind, it looks like things have to get worse before they get better. But what and who are we going to turn to be for lack of a better term, the midwives of this new humanity, or who are going to be the midwives of this new life, of this new lifestyle, of this new living? None other than those who have been connected with the earth this whole time and have never left its vibration, have never left its energy, have never left their connection to it. And for those of us who, I have a very funny anecdote ever so quickly. We've only got like 4 minutes left, and I want to talk to Miriam a little bit more. But ever so quickly, I had a student maybe 10 years ago, and we were out doing a shamanic ceremony, and she wouldn't take off her shoes because she was afraid to ruin her stockings. And this was a perfect example to me, of someone who was so disconnected from Earth, who couldn't even take off their shoes to allow the palms of their feet to touch the earth, to touch the dirt. And that just gives you a symbolic idea of how disconnected we could be as a whole. So who better to bring us back to that understanding than people like the Hopi and other indigenous cultures, and why this is so important. And, you know, Miriam, I always enjoy having you on, period. I always enjoy all of your work, always, always. We only have 3 more minutes, and I wanted to thank you for coming back on the show again. But before we go, ever so quickly, a quick question is, to your knowledge, to the best of your knowledge, do you know if and when the Hopi may come out to talk about the Blue Star Prophecy, or has that not even been discussed, to your knowledge? Or do you want no comment?
No comment.
Okay. Very good. And a great way to end the show.
What I will say is this, is that the Hopi are concerned and have been concerned that their prophecies have been used to instill fear within the people, and they do not want to participate in that fear, and that they ask the people of Earth to join them with their good hearts in their ceremonies and in their thoughts, so that we can build a positive future through this transitioning time. I can say that. That is translated through my words, but this is how they feel, and I know this. So
and
I thank everyone.
Perfect. That's a perfect closure to this discussion, and I think it's a very important one because there is a lot of people who have hijacked a lot of cultures' beliefs and are using it to instill fear as to the coming transitions, or what the transitions we are going through, I should say. And that's the other thing, ever so quickly, we're not waiting, it's happening. If you think it's happening in 2012, it's already happening today. And it may be a time to support the people like the Hopi. We have 1 minute left. Miriam, can you, ever so quickly, the bluestarprophecy.com is where the button is to help the Hopi?
Yes, if you want to, if you can assist with attorneys' fees for the Hopi, bluestarprophecy.com, Bernard Show. In that article is a donate button. It will go directly, fully to the Hopi, bluestarprophecy.com. And as a side note, thegreatgathering.org is still being worked on, but we are so close. And I'll be back on the show, hopefully, with you when that day comes. Very, very soon,
I look
Bernard.
forward
Very
to it.
exciting.
I look
Thank
forward
you so
to it.
much.